Hi, Algebra 1. I wanted to just go over the 3 problems that I had asked you to try last night. I mean, this is a new concept, so we're going to continue learning about it today. So this is on page 48. Problem number 1, we have x squared plus 6x plus 5. Very first thing we want to do, put a 1 out front. Okay, there was another number there, leave it there, don't change it to 1. Multiply 5 times 1, and I'm going to get positive 5. And please note, I keep putting the sign of what it is 1 out front. So the only way I can get to 5 is 1 times 5. Is 1 times 5 when add, or is 1 plus 5 equal to 6? And the answer is yes. So we're going to tag an x with both of those. So using my ends, I don't have to put the 1 out there anymore. I'm going to bring my 2 ends down, and then I'm going to put in the middle, using x, whatever order I want. I could have plus 1x plus 5x like I have, or I could have plus 5x plus 1x. It's still going to work out the same. Look at the first two. I have an x in common, and then I get x plus 1. Remember, this middle sign always comes down, and then I have a 5 in common between those. If I factor a 5 out, I'm left with x plus 1. These are the same. If those are not the same, it won't factor. If they are the same, then it will. Whatever I have left is x plus 5 goes in the other thing. Now just know, if you had flip-flopped the order, the answer would have come out to this, which is the same exact answer, okay? So these are equal answers. You pick one or the other. That works for you. Problem number 2, we have x squared minus 4x plus 4. Now there's one thing I want you to see on this change. There's a negative there, so we're going to keep that in mind when we start this problem. Let's put a 1 out front. 4 times 1 is positive 4. So in order to multiply two numbers together that get 4, it could be 1 and times 4. It could also be 2 times 2. Now I want you to think about this. Remember this negative right here? We're going to make both of these signs negative, because isn't a negative 2 times negative 2 positive 4? And if I add together negative 2x and negative 2x, doesn't that give me negative 4x? So I'm going to plug this in to my space. So I'm going to bring the ends down, and I'm going to plug in minus 2x and minus 2x, just like that. I realize I had plus minus here, but plus minus is the same thing as just subtraction. I'm going to look at my first two terms. I have an x in common. So that's going to give me an x minus 2. Remember, the middle sign comes down, which means I'm factoring a negative out. So I can factor a negative 2 out of both. If I factor a negative 2 out of this, I'm going to be left with positive x. If I factor a negative 2 out of here, I'm left with negative 2. Take a look at the answer. Isn't it the exact same two binomials? That's pretty cool. Problem number 3. We have x squared plus 0x minus 64. Okay, big thing to see here. I have that negative right here. I'm going to put the 1 out front, so I'm going to get negative 64. In order to multiply two numbers together to get a negative number, one has to be positive and one has to be negative. Let's keep that in mind. So I know that 1 times 64 is 64. And then let's list all the factors. 2 times 32. 4 times 1, 4 times 16. 5 doesn't work, 6 doesn't work, 7 doesn't work, 8 works, 8 and 8. Okay, so now I need to remember, one's positive, one's negative. If one's positive and one's negative, will that give me 0? No. If one's positive and one negative there, and I add them together, would I get 0? No, I'd either get 30 or negative 30. Here, if one's positive, one's negative, I would get either positive 12 or negative 12, depending upon which one's negative. But this one here, if one is positive and one is negative, and I add them together with the x's, that's going to make that 0x. Perfect. So let's go ahead and plug this in. So grab x squared, that comes down, minus 64. I'm going to plug this in, so I'm going to go plus 8x minus 8x, and again I could have flip-flopped the order, doesn't matter. That's going to give me an x out front, and then that's going to give me an x plus 8. The middle sign comes down, so here I can factor a negative 8 out, which changes the sign. If I factor negative 8 out of negative 8x, that's going to give me a positive x. If I factor a negative 8 out of that, I'm going to get a positive 8. Notice those are the same, and whatever I have left goes in the other one. So I have two of the exact same binomial. They just flip-flop each other. Okay, we're going to continue with our notes from the other day, and then I'm also going to put some rules down. So let's do the rules first. If I have a problem, you can put this at the bottom of page 47. Okay, see how you have a blank under there? We were working the problems up above, but at the bottom. So first step in these, I'm going to put factor a greatest common factor out. Okay, we're not here yet. We will get to this. So for here, we then go to step 2. If I have x squared, be sure put a 1x squared out in front. If this is a number already, you just leave it. Okay? And that's just it in the beginning of the problem. Third step, multiply the last number and number in front of x squared together. Note the sign. Is it positive or is it negative? The fourth step is, once you've multiplied those two numbers together, figure out what the factors. So if, let's do an example, if it came out to like negative 32 when I multiplied the first and the last numbers together, you know that you have one positive, one negative, and you know, and then list out the factors: 1 and 32, 2 and 16, 4 and 8. Those are the ways that you could multiply together, keeping it in mind, and then think about which one of these factors. So this is for continued. Think of those factors that would add up to number in front of x. That's the middle term. Then our fifth step would be to put the ends down. So you have the x squared term and then the number at the end, and then fill with the plus or minus, or the plus plus, or the minus minus in the middle. From there, go ahead and look at first two terms and factor. Look at last two and factor. And then you get your answer. Okay? So let's go back to page 47. And I believe I did these first two, but let me just do them one more time. So I'm going to put a 1 out front. Multiply those together, I get positive 10. Knowing that, I also have a negative right here. So in order to get a positive number, I have to have a positive times a positive or a negative times a negative. Because this is negative, it's going to be a negative negative. So 1 times 10 and 2 times 5. Which of those, when both added together, would give me negative 7? They both have to be negative. So I had negative 2 and negative 5. That gives me the negative 7. So bring the x squared down. Bring the plus 10 down. And note, I'm going to put negative 2x and negative 5x in there. Remember, I'm putting x's with both of those. Factor what you have in common. I have an x in common. That leaves me x minus 2. Middle sign comes down. Factor out a 5. Negative 5 taken out of 5x is x. Negative 5 taken out of positive 10 is negative 2. Those are the same. That's what we want. There's your answer. Oops, sorry about that. Number 2, I already have a number up front, so I don't have to put a 1. Multiply those together, so I get a positive 15. Take a look at all our signs. Everything's positive, so both numbers are going to be positive, positive. So 1 times 15 and 3 and 5 multiply together to give me that 15. If I add 1 and 15 together, I get the 16, so that's my answer. So I'm going to plug that in, make sure I put an x with both of those. Bring our ends down, so I get 3x squared plus 5. In between them, I'm going to put plus 1x and plus 15x. Okay, I could have had it in any order, doesn't matter. I could have had 15x first and 1x, it's still going to work out. So I'm factoring x out of both of those. That leaves me 3x plus 1. Middle sign comes down. Factor a 5 out. So that gives me 3x plus 1. Those are the same. That's what you want. If they're not the same, it won't factor, but they are the same, so it does factor. And there's our answer. So we're saying to watch those signs, okay? Keep that in mind. So problem number 3 on that next page, or on page 47. Multiply those together, so I'm going to get a positive 20. Investigate your signs. One of them is negative. This is positive, so the signs have to be the same. So in this case, I know they're both negative because I'm going to add them up to get a negative number. So 1 times 20, 2 times 10, and 4 times 5. If these are both negative, that gives me negative 21. That's not negative 9. This is negative 12. That's negative 9. This would give me negative 9 if I added them together. Make sure you put the x's. Bring down your ends. So you get 2x squared plus 10. And then we're going to say negative 4x, negative 5x. Again, I could have had any order. It's still going to work out. Factor a 2x out of both of those. That leaves me x minus 2. Middle sign comes down. Factor out a negative 5. Factor negative 5 out of negative 5x. That's going to be positive. Factor negative 5 out of positive 10. That's going to give me a negative 2. These are like terms. And then whatever I've left is my answer, 2x minus 5. There's my whole answer. Number 4, there's not a number out front that I see, so I'm going to put a 1. That's a negative 16. Okay, let's keep this in mind. A negative 16 means I have to have a positive and a negative. I multiply a positive and negative together, I get a negative answer when multiplied. So 1 times 16, 2 times 8, and 4 times 4. Okay, let's think about which of these would add together that are only 6 apart. Well, these are 15 apart. These are 6 apart. These are 0 apart. So this has to be our answer. So let's think about this. We have our 2x and we have 8x. Which of those would have to be positive and which would have to be negative to give me a positive 6? So negative 2 added to 8x gives me positive 6, which is great. Let's bring our ends down. And then I'm going to plug this right here into the between them in whatever order I want. Take a look here. I can factor an x out, and that's going to give me x minus 2. The middle sign comes down. Factor out an 8. That gives me x minus 2. Those are the same. If they're not the same, again, they won't factor, but they are. And then in the other parentheses, put that. And here is our answer. Number 5, I don't have to put a 1 out front because I have a 3, so I get a negative 24. Okay, when I get a negative number, I know one has to be positive, one has to be negative when I multiply. And I know that 1 times 24. I also know that 2 times 12. I know that 3 times 8. And I know that 4 times 6. So let's think about this. Which ones, one being positive, one being negative, are 5 apart? Well, these are 23 apart. These are 10 apart. These are 5 apart. These are 2 apart. This has to be the answer. So I'm going to have a 3x and an 8x. Okay, which one has to be positive to give me a positive 5? Which one has to be negative? Yeah, negative 3x, positive 5. If I did it the wrong way, that would give me a negative 5x. So watch your signs on that. Bring this down, so I get 3x squared Bring this down, so I get minus 8. In between, I'm going to plug this in, whatever order I want. So I can factor a 3x out here. That leaves me x minus 1. Middle sign comes down. Factor out an 8. That's x minus 1. Take a look at those. There's my answer. Last problem that we're going to try. I don't have to put a 1 out front. I'm going to multiply those together, so I'm going to get positive 24. Take a look at our signs. Ooh, we have a negative there. That's a positive, so they both have to be negative because negative times negative is positive. So list the factors of 24. So I got 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6. So both negative. That gives me negative 25. That gives me negative 14. That gives me negative 11. That gives me negative 10. That's what we're going to have. We're going to have negative 3x and negative 8x that we're going to plug in. So let's bring down our ends. I get 12x squared. I get plus 2. Let's put these in between, whatever order I want. I can factor a 3x out of both of those. That leaves me 4x minus 1. Remember, I have a placeholder for everything factors out. Middle sign comes down. I can factor out a negative 2. So that's going to give me 4x. Change that sign, minus 1. Those are both the same, so this factors. There's our answer. Okay, so what I would like you to do is I want you to finish page 48. Make sure 1 through 12, all of them are done. You have the rest of the period to work on. Ask me if you have questions. I can help you. Work together if you need to. See if you can get this done before tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be Friday. I will tell you, I'm going to give you a little tiny quiz tomorrow. It'll probably be 2 questions. Okay? And I want you to be able to factor them out. And I'll let you use your notes on that quiz. Okay? Have a nice day.